Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now, in today's episode, we are continuing on with the engine shed depot area and the incline, obviously up to that, plus the area where this new abandoned or disused viaduct is going to be placed. So for those who watched the previous episode, which of course was stage one of this new build of the engine shed depot area, the disused viaduct, and of course the slight incline that rises up, of course, to the depot area. Plus also there was the coal stage, which of course has a split level in it as well. So we got the second half of that incline set up and did all the framework, of course, for supporting all of that, and of course also being able to place it in the Northlight engine shed and set up the coal stage. So in today's video, it's looking at the first half of that incline. So that is essentially where the existing engine shed is, and the sort of flat area, plus where the line of course branches off from the mainline tracks. So as I mentioned in that previous episode, there was the plan to raise that entire area by 18 millimeters. So that's of course where the engine shed is, and have the incline come up to sort of kind of meet halfway, I guess, and then for the incline to carry on and of course meet up with the other half of the incline that I'd already built. So of course one of the factors that I needed to take into account, of course, in raising this area by 18 millimeters was A, whether I could actually do it and retain the baseboard. There was also the embankment that leads down into the storage area cutting, and of course what I needed to do there is actually trim some of that embankment so that it could accept the higher 18 millimeter height. So there was just a number of little areas that needed to be prepped beforehand, if you could say that, and then of course also trimming out some of the card that I'd actually laid down in order to sort of have recessed track for what would be a depot area, and so that needed trimming out and smoothing down and so forth. And this is just simply in preparation for running a mini jigsaw cutter through the cut lines. So our mini jigsaw cutter has arrived, and it's made by Proxon, and of course never really heard of them before, but after doing a bit of research, they make an awful lot of tools, and they make a lot of precision type power tools that are ideal for the modelling industry. So this is really going to be ideal for me to cut through this baseboard, and you can change the foot plate on this from a ball foot plate to a more like a traditional jigsaw cutter. Now I do understand that these blades are very fine and can easily break, so I need to be very careful with that. It does have an adjustable or variable speed on it, but I don't have the official Proxon 12 volt transformer that you're supposed to use with this. I'm actually just using another transformer, which is probably not a good idea, so but it's working okay. So I've drilled a few pilot holes where the cut lines can begin from, because obviously I've got to get in here and start cutting through, and I've also marked out where I know that there's actually beams running through the underside of this baseboard, because I certainly don't want to be sort of hitting them. Now this saw can apparently cut up to 10 mil wood or ply or MDF, which is pretty good. You can also get another blade, of course, which is for cutting metal, and I think you can cut up to 1.5 mil metal sheet, which, you know, that's pretty good. So anyway, we're going to start this. I haven't done anything, so I'm just hoping this is going to work. I've got to cut through this section here. This whole piece I'm just actually going to take out and replace. The idea is that this section here where the brown is is that hopefully I can just simply lift it all up, even though it is actually made up of, it will be 3 pieces, because there's a piece here and a piece here and a piece here, and I think the only thing that will hold it all together, of course, is the track that's mounted in here. And of course I'm also hoping, and I'm really not quite sure, I can't remember, I'm really hoping I didn't glue the baseboard to the frame, and that I just simply screwed the baseboard to the frame. So I guess we're going to find that all out. So we'll speed through this. This thing does make quite a bit of noise when I switch the power on, as you can see. We have a problem already, and I've just broken the blade. Now, people are probably wondering, well, why am I not just using my standard jigsaw cutter? The only problem is my jigsaw cutter is quite large, and it's just going to collide with this track work in here, and yeah, that's the reason why I thought it would be good to use one of these. It would be kind of silly if I go back and use my standard jigsaw cutter, which I might end up doing. Right, okay, well, that didn't work out as planned. So yeah, out came the good old-fashioned jigsaw cutter, of course much bigger and clumsier, and of course it makes an incredible mess. So there is sawdust for Africa all over this layout now. So yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed with the Proxon mini jigsaw cutter. I did read that people were having issue with the blades just breaking too easily. Whether or not the blades that come with the actual jigsaw cutter are just sort of low grade blades that they include with the pack, and maybe you can actually buy much higher grade blades that don't break so easily. So I'll find out more about it, because I certainly do think a mini jigsaw cutter is a really great tool, but of course it's not so great if the blades keep breaking. Right, so of course there's areas here where I haven't cut through. There's a beam right in here, there's some beams here, so in these areas I'm just going to finish off and work my way through it with a craft knife to cut this back, and then we should be able to at least lift this section out, because I want to try and get this out in one piece without too much damage, because of course I'll use this to trace out a new section that will start all the way back here, because there's a beam in here, and it'll be a complete single piece that will then join up with that. So, and then hopefully we can raise this up as well. So yeah, we'll just see how it goes. Right, so it didn't go exactly as I planned it, and as you can see, I've pretty much emptied my entire toolbox onto the layout in order to get this section up. I had glued that one, so it was pretty much destroyed. So I'm not too worried about it, to be honest. I knew it was going to be a bit touch and go as to whether I could simply lift this layer up by 18 millimeters and keep everything intact. So I'm kind of happy with it because it means that I'll redo this. I'll do it with one section of baseboard through here. So there'll be the line coming up here, and then of course this is going to be at a different level. It's going to be about 18 millimeters higher than this current frame at the moment. Right, so I've moved ahead a little bit further, and once I'd actually, with great difficulty, removed the glued down baseboards that were around this area here, I just simply actually used the pieces that I ripped out to trace out a new entire piece of baseboard to run through here. So what I'm doing at the moment is I've just laid a thin bit of card here. It's almost sort of more heavyweight paper, and I've slotted that in underneath here, and I'm just tracing out the shape through here, and also just marking out the edge through here as well, where the incline is actually going to rise up. So the actual new piece of baseboard here, it's a single piece of 6mm MDF, and what I've done is just attached 18 by 18mm timber batten underneath, and this is all glued down, and I just tacked it through with some very short nails underneath, and it makes for quite a rigid baseboard for here. And once this is all ready and I've cut out some holes for point work and things like that, then this can actually be permanently anchored down to the existing framework that's sitting in underneath here. So I'm going to go ahead and slide this piece of heavyweight paper out, cut out around here, use that as a template to cut out another section of 6mm MDF, and then we can actually start to assemble this incline. So I've now completed the other half of this incline, rising up from down by the platform area, and also the newly raised up engine shed area here. And I've just placed some of the point work back in. It's just temporarily sitting in here, with the point motors obviously going through their respective slots in the baseboard layer. So we've now got it nicely lined up with the previous section of incline that I built in stage 1, and I'm pretty happy with it. It's bordering on the maximum really that I'd like to have for this incline, and from previous comments I know that a lot of people mentioned that locomotives certainly won't have any issues with 3%, and particularly on an incline going to a engine shed and depot area, of course it's not going to be hauling any long trains. And absolutely right, any of my locomotives will no doubt get up this incline. It was just purely from a sort of realism point of view. I didn't want the incline just looking out of place and too steep in relation to the other areas around the layout. So with the core structure now in place, there's still plenty of things to do. For example, there's going to be retaining wall around in this area here, more retaining wall around there, and of course it'll run around this edge as well. So I think we can leave this where it is now, because the next stage will be to actually start remapping out the track work and pinning that down into place and bringing the track work up into this other depot area. So that, of course, as I mentioned in stage 1, will require quite a bit of testing with different locomotives just to make sure that the track work is all as it should be. So I'll head over to the area at the end there where the viaduct is, and I'm having some thoughts about some slight changes there. And then also what I've been doing is working on the lift out section that's going in here where I'm standing. Right, so now looking at this end of the build, and I think one of the first things that I've changed is I've increased the height of what the viaduct will be. So I've now added another 40 millimeters to the bottom of my makeshift viaduct, which is of course going to sit in here. I really honestly felt that it just needed a little bit more height in it. As I mentioned in stage 1, of course, the idea of for this to be quite imposing. So there's that aspect there. And then once, of course, I'd built this area in here and got the engine shed in and got this sort of whole depot area positioned in place, I had some second thoughts about the idea of a arch girder bridge coming across here and then a tunnel tucked in behind here. And in some respects, although there is quite potentially that kind of thing that could really exist on the rail network in the UK, I really sort of felt like I wanted this track work to disappear a bit earlier, so the direction of the track disappearing would be further around. So I've had a few thoughts, and what I'm actually planning on doing is popping in a tunnel here instead. So our tunnel portal will go here, and I did a little bit of research because I know that the chances of there being a 3-track portal or tunnel is quite rare, but interestingly I did find a tunnel, although it's quite a short tunnel, that actually has 4 tracks in it. So I thought I can get away with this idea of the tunnel being 3 tracks wide. So with that in mind, the idea is this will actually be a hillside that's actually going to come up from here. This viaduct will carry on right out to the edge of the baseboard, and of course the elevation of the hillside, of course, will start to come up the other side as if this was really kind of like a valley going down. So the idea is the valley would also run down in behind here and then rise up the other side over here. Now, some people might think, well, it's a bit disappointing losing the idea of a arch girder bridge on this side, but what I'm planning on doing is having obviously some form of girder bridge on that side. I'll still stick with that. So my thoughts are with that bridge on this side would be like a lattice girder bridge of some sort that would run across there. So I had a little bit of a hunt around and did some research and found some girder bridges that I actually sort of think would work quite well there. Because this viaduct is a bit higher than what it originally was planned, I thought of one of those lattice girder bridges where the lattice structure was underneath the track, and then of course there's some hand railings and so forth on top. That really sort of would help reduce the height that that bridge might run across the tracks that are actually down there. So that might work. I mean, interesting to hear your comments on what you think. The other option was to do an arch girder bridge that simply curves up and over, but I kind of feel that the height might be possibly too much. So the next component that I've been working on is the idea of a lift out section within this access area, and as you can see, I've now added a strut across there which is going to support the structure that I'm going to put through here, and I've also added a strut down at the other end. Now I think that's really all it's going to need in some respects, because essentially what I'm planning on doing is just filling out this area with some chunks of high density styrene. So we've already cut out the shapes to suit this area, and at this stage I haven't actually glued them all together. They're all just separate layers at the moment, but there is two 50mm layers that slot into this space. So they fit in there, and of course, as you can imagine, they're going to be carved and shaped so that they run down to that lower level of track. And then there is a thinner sheet, which is this 40mm high density foam, that's going to slot in there, because that needs to be a bit shallower, because our viaduct is going to run through here, and then we have another final piece of 40mm which is going to sit over here. And of course this will all be glued together, and the idea is, with the churchyard where there's a handle hidden under the church, there'll be a handle here which a building will be sitting on top of to hide it, and I can just simply lift this whole piece out. And because it's all made of this high density styrene, it's going to be very lightweight and easy to manage. So the viaduct will then sit over here, and where there's a bit of a gap here, that is going to be shaped and be part of the landform where the viaduct is. So this section here, the landform will be attached to the viaduct, so that the viaduct can come out as a separate piece, this can come out as a separate piece, and then of course also this area here will come out as a separate piece. So all of these components can be detached from the layout if I need to gain access to the track work for potentially any kind of heavy duty track cleaning, or if of course there is any derailments. So it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on pushing this tunnel entrance out. This would all be landform coming up here, and the viaduct would come across. Whether or not I make this landform quite steep and the viaduct comes in and actually starts to work its way into potentially even just a smidgen of a cutting on this side, but I kind of feel more comfortable about pushing this viaduct right out to the edge of the baseboard in stone arches, rather than having this arched girder bridge running across. It means that I can close off this track work earlier, and that really sort of gives the impression really that the track work could be heading out in this direction over here. So that's where the project is at the moment. I'll leave it there for today's episode, but I certainly think it's starting to take shape a little bit more, and you can clearly sort of see the incline and start to possibly build a picture of how it's going to look in the future weeks, possibly months, as I progress along with this area. So I think the next step obviously is to actually lay this track on the newly created inclines and pin that down, and of course do some testing of locomotives. And I can't really see any problems with the locomotives being able to run on this depot area. So I'll probably also start on the planning or design for the viaduct itself. I really sort of need to get into that to be able to sort of work out how the landform is going to continue from that point on towards the end of where the engine shed is. And then of course also sort of work out this tunnel entrance area, which I think I will sort of go with. It's sort of sitting with me better than the idea of a bridge crossing over in that particular area at the end of the engine shed. So I'll leave it there for today's video. Certainly hope you're getting some ideas and inspiration for your own layouts. Do take care everyone, look after yourselves. Of course don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.